You've been trained to betray yourself, and no one ever told you that was the lesson. From the moment you learned to speak, a quiet program was installed in your mind. Be polite. Be agreeable. Don't make waves. Keep the peace. At first, it sounded like virtue. It wore the mask of goodness. But what it really did was teach you to shrink your instincts until they whispered instead of roared. And now, years later, you feel it every day. That dull pressure in your chest when you want to say no, but hear yourself say yes. That tight smile when something crosses a line and you let it slide. That exhaustion that comes from being endlessly understanding. Here is the truth most people never face. That voice inside you urging you to be nice is not your conscience. It is conditioning. It is a leash, and the more faithfully you obey it, the more invisible you become. Look closely at your life. Notice how often you wait to be chosen. You wait to speak. You wait to be invited. You wait for permission that never arrives. Meanwhile, others take the floor, take the credit, take the space. Not because they are better than you, but because they are unburdened by the rules still running your behavior. You call it maturity. Machiavelli would call it obedience. Society never trained you to be powerful. It trained you to be manageable. Every reward for silence, every punishment for defiance, every lesson disguised as being good was a small rehearsal for submission. Over time, you learn to associate self-expression with danger and compliance with safety. The cage didn't need bars, you carried it with you. And here is the brutal part. The world can sense it. People may not consciously articulate it, but they feel when someone is easy to override. They feel it in your hesitation, your softened language, your habit of cushioning the truth so no one feels uncomfortable. That softness does not inspire trust or respect. It signals availability. It marks you as someone who can be pushed without consequence. Machiavelli understood something that still terrifies people to hear. Being nice does not make you good. It makes you predictable. And predictability is the raw material of control. When others know you will avoid conflict, they lean into it. When they know you will forgive, they take more. When they know you fear being disliked, they weaponize it against you. Think of it like this. A sheep believes the fence exists to protect it. The wolf knows the fence exists to contain it. You were taught to see the system as moral order. In reality, it is a sorting mechanism. Those who obey stay in line. Those who interrupt, assert, and take space rise. Not because the world is fair, but because it responds to force, not intention. This is why the polite voice inside you panics when you hear this. It wants you to click away, to dismiss this as negativity, to retreat into familiar comfort. That panic is not wisdom. It is the program fighting to survive. Because the moment you see the cage, it loses its power. Power does not begin with dominance over others. It begins with refusing to betray yourself for approval. It begins the instant you stop treating your instincts like threats and start treating them like intelligence. The people who command rooms are not morally superior. They are psychologically unrestrained. They do not ask permission to exist at full volume. The metaphor is simple. You have been living like water in someone else's container, constantly reshaping yourself to fit the space you're given. Power is choosing to become the container instead, rigid enough to hold form, strong enough to set boundaries, calm enough to let others adjust to you. This is not a call to cruelty. It is a call to clarity. The first step is not action. It is recognition. Seeing how deeply you've been trained to confuse obedience with virtue. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, the old way of living starts to feel unbearable. That discomfort is not a warning. It is a signal. Something in you is waking up. Once you break the illusion of conditioning, a second truth rushes in. And this one hurts more. People are not as selfless as you were taught to believe. They are not secretly rooting for your rise. They are watching, comparing, measuring themselves against you in silence. And the moment your success threatens their position in their own mind, something shifts. You've seen it before. A friend smiles when you share good news, but their eyes hesitate for a fraction of a second. A coworker congratulates you, yet their tone feels thinner than it should. That pause, that flicker, is not imagination. It is human nature revealing itself. We are wired to compete long before we are wired to cooperate. Survival taught us comparison before it taught us compassion. Most people don't wake up plotting your downfall. They don't need to. Envy works quietly. It leaks into conversations, into subtle sabotage, into the way information is forgotten, or opportunities somehow bypass you. And because you were trained to be nice, you excuse it. You tell yourself you're overthinking. You give them the benefit of the doubt. Machiavelli would tell you that is where power drains out of you unnoticed. Understanding this is not pessimism. It is precision. When you accept that people prioritize themselves first, their behavior stops confusing you. Betrayal no longer shocks you. Disappointment no longer feels personal. You stop asking, "Why would they do this to me?" and start asking, "What does this serve for them?" That shift alone changes how you move through the world. Think of trust like credit. You don't hand out unlimited credit to strangers and then act surprised when they default. Yet emotionally, that's exactly what most people do. They overshare plans, reveal vulnerabilities, announce intentions before results exist. They assume goodwill where none has been earned. And then they feel wounded when that openness is used against them. Power begins where discretion replaces confession. You learn to keep your victories quiet until they are irreversible. You stop announcing moves and start delivering outcomes, not because you are hiding, but because visibility before leverage invites interference. The loudest plan is the weakest one. There is a metaphor Machiavelli would appreciate here. Imagine walking through a forest with meat tied around your neck, wondering why predators follow you. That meat is your transparency, your need to be understood, your urge to explain yourself so others feel comfortable. Predators don't attack because you are evil or deserving. They attack because you are exposed. When you internalize this, something liberating happens. You stop needing loyalty. Loyalty is fragile and emotional. Instead, you create alignment. You design situations where it is in someone's interest to respect you. Fear of losing access replaces guilt. Consequence replaces pleading. The dynamic flips. This is why those who understand human selfishness appear calm while others panic. They don't expect fairness. They expect patterns, and patterns are predictable. The person who smiles while undercutting you. The one who supports you publicly but competes privately. Once you see it, you stop bleeding energy trying to fix people who are acting exactly as designed. The mistake is thinking this knowledge makes you cold. It doesn't. It makes you efficient. You still choose kindness, but now it is selective. You still help, but not blindly. You still care, but without surrendering leverage. Compassion without boundaries is charity for parasites. Here is the deeper layer. When you accept that everyone is managing their own insecurity, you stop internalizing rejection. You stop shrinking when others project their fear onto you. Their discomfort with your growth is not your responsibility. Their jealousy is not your burden to soothe. The metaphor is this. Most people swim while constantly scanning others, afraid of falling behind. When you stop scanning and start swimming your own lane, the water feels calmer. not because competition vanished, but because you exited the comparison loop. That alone gives you an edge. This is the moment your thinking unlocks. You realize power isn't about dominating people. It's about not being surprised by them. And when you are no longer surprised, you are no longer reactive. You become deliberate, quiet, difficult to manipulate. That calm is dangerous, and once you taste it, you won't want to go back. Here is where the illusion finally collapses. Niceness is not respect's little brother. It is its opposite. Nice people are tolerated, relied upon, and quietly exploited. Truth-tellers, on the other hand, are remembered. They are weighed. They are respected even when they are disliked. And the difference between the two is not volume or aggression. It is boundary. Think about someone you genuinely respect. Not someone you enjoy, not someone who entertains you, but someone whose presence carries weight. Notice what they share in common. They don't rush to agree. They don't soften reality to protect feelings. They don't apologize for existing at full strength. When they speak, something tightens in the room. Attention sharpens. That is not charisma. That is consequence. Nice people confuse harmony with safety. They believe that avoiding friction preserves connection. In reality, it erodes authority. Every time you swallow a truth to keep things smooth, you teach others that your discomfort is negotiable. You become useful, not respected. And usefulness is a dangerous role. Tools are valued only as long as they perform. Look at any workplace, any social circle, any family system. Who gets interrupted? Who gets overruled? Who absorbs extra work without recognition? Almost always, it's the person who never pushes back. Meanwhile, the one who calmly says, "That's not acceptable," or "That's not my responsibility," reshapes the dynamic instantly. No shouting, no drama, just refusal. And refusal, when delivered cleanly, is power. Machiavelli understood this brutally well. What works in one phase of life will destroy you in another. Niceness protected you when you were small and powerless. As an adult, it signals that you still see yourself that way. Truth-telling replaces niceness because truth forces others to adjust. It introduces friction, and friction creates hierarchy. There is a metaphor here worth sitting with. Nice people are like cushions. They absorb impact so others don't have to feel it. Truth-tellers are like walls. You feel where they stand the moment you touch them. One makes life comfortable, the other defines space. The world respects space, not softness. This is why boundaries feel so unnatural at first. You were trained to associate firmness with danger. To speak plainly feels like aggression because you were rewarded for politeness, not clarity. But clarity is not cruelty. It is precision. And precision commands respect, even from those who resent it. Watch how language changes when someone steps into truth. They stop adding just, maybe, I think, and sorry to every sentence. They state. They don't cushion reality. They don't manage emotional fallout. They let reactions happen. That restraint signals confidence far more than reassurance ever could. This is where many people panic. They fear losing relationships. And they will. Not because truth destroys connection, but because it destroys arrangements built on your silence. Some people only value you for what you absorb for them. When you stop absorbing, they leave. That is not loss. It is filtration. Think of it like upgrading your immune system. The illness resists first. The body aches. Then strength returns. Relationships that survive honesty deepen. Those that relied on compliance collapse. What remains is smaller, but real. Here is the shift that matters most. You stop measuring yourself by how comfortable others feel around you. You start measuring yourself by how aligned you are with your own standards. When that alignment is strong, people feel it. They may test it, but they won't ignore it. Respect is not begged for. It is provoked. Not through aggression, but through consistency. The moment people realize that crossing you has a cost, social, emotional, or practical, they recalibrate. You didn't threaten them. You didn't explain. You simply became less available to disrespect. The metaphor to carry forward is this. Niceness is a currency that inflates until it's worthless. Truth is scarce, and scarcity creates value. When your words are rare, clear, and unsoftened, they land heavier. People listen not because you are loud, but because you are solid. This is the moment you stop being useful and start being respected. And once that shift happens, you don't need to announce it. The room adjusts on its own. At the core of people-pleasing is one addiction that quietly destroys freedom. The need for approval. Not love. Approval. The constant monitoring of faces, tones, pauses. The instinct to adjust yourself mid-sentence based on how the room reacts. Every time you do that, you abandon your center. And abandonment, repeated enough times, becomes identity loss. Look at your day honestly. How often did you laugh when nothing was funny? Agree when you didn't agree? Hold back a thought because it might change the vibe? That wasn't kindness. That was fear wearing manners, fear of conflict, fear of judgment, fear of being excluded. And fear is expensive. It costs you clarity, presence, and eventually self-respect. Here is the paradox Machiavelli understood long before modern psychology named it. The more you seek approval, the less you are valued. Approval seeking flips the power dynamic. It tells others, without words, that their reaction defines your worth. And whoever defines your worth controls you. Strong people do not ask the room who they are. They decide privately and act publicly. They don't need constant confirmation because their standards are internal. That internal anchor is what gives them gravity. When they speak, they are not checking for permission. They are stating position. Think of approval like oxygen. When you believe you need it to survive, anyone can suffocate you by withholding it. When you stop needing it, it loses leverage entirely. This is why confident people feel calm under disapproval. They don't interpret resistance as rejection. They interpret it as friction against a solid core. This is also why dominance feels uncomfortable to watch. True dominance does not soothe. It does not rush to repair tension. It allows silence. It lets awkwardness hang. Most people scramble to fill gaps because they are terrified of emotional vacuum. They talk, joke, apologize, explain. The dominant person does none of that. They stay still. Stillness is misunderstood as coldness. In reality, it is emotional sovereignty. When you stop managing how others feel, you reclaim enormous energy. You no longer rescue people from their discomfort. You let them sit in it. And strangely, that restraint commands respect far faster than reassurance ever could. Watch group dynamics closely. The person who controls the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one who doesn't react immediately, the one who doesn't laugh automatically, the one whose silence changes the rhythm. Others begin adjusting to them, not the other way around. That adjustment is power in its most natural form. Machiavelli would say this is not cruelty, it is efficiency. You are not responsible for regulating everyone's emotional state. The moment you release that false responsibility, dominance emerges organically. You stop chasing harmony and start setting tone. Here is the metaphor. Approval seekers are like mirrors, constantly reflecting others back to themselves. Dominant individuals are like gravity. They don't move to accommodate. Others move in response. One exhausts itself maintaining connection. The other attracts without effort. This is where many people hesitate. They fear being labeled difficult, cold, changed. And they will be, by those who benefited from your flexibility. But those labels are not warnings. They are signals that the old dynamic no longer works. Freedom is not being liked. Freedom is being able to say what you think, wear what you choose, walk away when something violates your standards, and sleep without rehearsing conversations you should have handled differently. Freedom is choosing authenticity over acceptance, even when your voice shakes. When you let go of approval, something flips. People start watching you instead of the other way around. They seek your reaction, your validation, your presence, not because you demanded it, but because you stopped giving it away. That is the quiet moment power takes root. The final shift is the hardest to accept because it contradicts everything you were taught about being good. Respect is not born from love. It is born from consequence, not violence, not cruelty. Consequence. The awareness that crossing you has a cost, the knowledge that disappointing you matters. Without that, your presence carries no weight. Think about the people who actually adjust their behavior around you. The ones who show up on time, choose their words carefully, put in effort. They are not doing that because they like you more. They are doing it because they fear losing standing in your eyes. That fear is not toxic. It is structural. It creates order. This is why approval, when given freely, becomes worthless. When you praise everything, nothing stands out. When you validate everyone, no one values your opinion. Scarcity is what gives approval power. When it is rare, measured, and earned, it reshapes behavior without a single demand. Withholding approval is not manipulation. It is calibration. You stop rewarding mediocrity. You stop rushing to affirm people who haven't earned it. Your attention becomes selective. Your response time slows. Your validation becomes intentional. And suddenly, people lean in. They try harder. They seek alignment. This is not about ego. It is about hierarchy. Humans organize themselves around standards. When you have none, others impose theirs on you. When you have clear, enforced standards, people orient themselves around you. They may resist at first, but they adapt. They always do. Here is the deeper layer. Fear, in its refined form, is the language of respect. Not fear of harm, but fear of loss. Loss of access. Loss of status. Loss of your regard. When someone knows you will walk away without drama, without pleading, without explanation, they recalibrate. When they know you will call out disrespect calmly and publicly, they think twice. Nice people have no leverage because there is no consequence to ignoring them. Strong people don't threaten, they demonstrate. Their boundaries are quiet, firm, and enforced. One violation is addressed. The second ends access. No speeches, no negotiations, just removal. The metaphor here is fire. A fire that burns constantly becomes background warmth. A fire that burns rarely but intensely commands attention. Your standards should work the same way. Clear, consistent, non-negotiable. This is where everything integrates. You no longer seek approval because you generate it through presence. You no longer explain because your behavior teaches. You no longer chase respect because your absence creates it. People feel the cost of losing you, and that feeling does the work for you. The old version of you tried to be liked. This version aims to be undeniable, not loud, not aggressive, just solid, grounded, unmovable. You stop managing comfort and start managing standards. And here is the awakening. Power is not something you add to yourself. It is something you stop giving away. Every time you withheld truth, approval, boundaries, and consequence, you leaked it. Now you seal those leaks. The world will test you. People will push, label, provoke. That is how they check whether the shift is real. Don't argue, don't defend. Hold the line. Consistency is what transforms perception. This is the end of the people pleaser. Not because you became cruel, but because you became clear. You see the leash, you understand human nature, you speak truth. You abandon approval, you control frame, you protect energy. You let fear of disappointment replace fear of rejection. From here on, you walk differently. You enter rooms without asking permission. You leave when standards are violated. You speak less, but every word lands. You don't chase, you select. The choice is no longer abstract. Remain comfortable and invisible, or step into discomfort and become respected. One keeps you liked, the other makes you powerful, and once you choose power, there is no going back. You were never weak. You were trained to be manageable, trained to confuse goodness with obedience, silence with virtue, approval with safety. But now you see the structure, you see the leash, and once you see it, you can never unknow it. Power was never something you needed to acquire, it was something you needed to stop surrendering. From this moment forward, your life changes not because you become louder, harsher, or cruel, but because you become deliberate. You speak when it matters. You withdraw when it strengthens you. You protect your time, your energy, your standards. Some will leave. Let them. They were only attached to the version of you they could control. The world does not reward purity. It rewards clarity. Choose clarity. Choose consequence. Choose to be the man people respect without fully understanding why. That is where real power begins.